It was wonderful to relate the many other occasions wherein it pleased God to furnish his servant with extraordinary supplies in order to support his boundless charities, so that, generally speaking, the more he gave away, the more he received from the divine bounty through the hands of charitable Christians, and sometimes not without an evident miracle. A citizen, who after living in opulent circumstances had been suddenly reduced to extreme poverty, applied to the saint in the church for an alms. He, recollecting him to have been not long before a wealthy man, had great compassion on him, and whispered to his almoner to give him 15 pounds of gold, which, when the almoner was going to execute, he was persuaded by the secretary and the steward to give him only 5 pounds. The saint, returning home from the church, was met by a rich widow, who put a promissory note in his hands, in which she was obliged herself to give him 500 pieces of gold for the poor. Having received the note, and knowing in spirit that it was sent to recompense the charity given to the above-mentioned citizen, he required and found out that his officers had only given him 5 pounds instead of 15, whereupon he told them they would be answerable to God for the other 1,000 pieces of gold which the good lady that had been given the note for the 500 had designed for the poor, if they had not abridged her charity by not complying with his. In order to convince them thereof, having sent for the lady, he asked her in their presence if the sum mentioned in the note was what she had originally intended to give to Jesus Christ, or whether she had proposed to give him a larger sum. She, suspecting by his question that what had passed had been revealed from heaven, she was struck with fear and astonishment, and assured him in the most solemn manner that she had actually written 1,500 pieces of gold, but that looking at the note just before she had presented it to him at church, she found to her great astonishment the 1,500 changed into 500, but knew not by what means nor by whom, as the paper had never been in any other person's hands but her own, and therefore concluded it to be the will of God that she should give no more than 500. A captain of a ship, a stranger, having suffered great losses at sea, besought our saint, with many tears, that he would have the same compassion for him as he had on all others in distress. He ordered his almoner to give him the weight of 5 pounds in gold, which sum enabled him to repair his vessel and put it to sea again. But scarcely had he sailed out of port when a storm arose which obliged him to fling all his goods overboard, and it was with the utmost difficulty he saved his ship. Again he applied to the saint, begging he would have compassion on him for the sake of him who had shown pity to the whole world. The holy prelate, having told him that this misfortune had befallen him in consequence of having mingled the charity money which he received at the church with what remained of his former ill-gotten wealth, and that therefore he had lost both, gave him now the weight of 10 pounds in gold, bidding him take care not to mix it with any other money. Thus, being enabled to repair and load his vessel with a fresh cargo, he tried his fortune a second time, but with worse success than ever. For being cast away upon the coast, he lost both ship and cargo, and hardly escaped with his life. This latter misfortune drove him into so violent a fit of despair that he was almost tempted to make away with himself, if the holy patriarch, who had learnt by revelation all that had happened, had not sent for him to comfort him, with the assurance that the like misfortune should never again befall him, and that this was permitted in consequence of him having obtained by unjust means the possession of his ship. Then, in order to set him up in the world again, the saint appointed him captain of the large vessel belonging to the church of Alexandria, and sent him out laden with 20,000 bushels of wheat. What follows is an abstract of the account given by the captain himself, with the most solemn asseveration of its veracity. "We sailed," said he, "during the space of 20 days and 20 nights, with so violent a wind, that not being able, either by the stars or the sight of any land, to know in what part of the world we were, we should have given ourselves up for lost, had not the pilot assured us that he saw the holy patriarch by his side at the helm, bidding him not to fear, for that we were in the right road. On the 20th day we came within sight of England, where, when we put to land, found a great famine. Upon our making it known that we were laden with corn, the principal magistrate of the place told us God had sent us to assist them in their extremity, and having given us our choice either to receive money or the weight of our corn in British tin, we chose one half in coin, the other in tin. But behold, a still greater wonder wrought by our Lord. As a recompense for the charity of our saint, as soon as the ship returned safe back to the coast of Egypt, some of the British tin, being sold by the captain to a dealer in pewter, who, on melting it down, found it pure silver, upon which, when he went to reproach the captain, as if he had suspected his honesty, and meant by a stratagem to put it to a trial, the whole was carefully examined, and all found to be excellent silver. But as our saint had, on so many occasions, received these miraculous supplies, in order to enable him to continue his extraordinary charities, so was he also sometimes tried, like Job, with great losses, which were shortly after repaid to him with interest. Nicetas, the governor, urged on by some evil counselors, under the pretense of the pressing necessities of the state, on account of relieving of the Persian war, demanded and carried off in the name of the emperor all the money that had been brought to our saint for charitable uses, leaving him master of only 100 crowns. But on the same day a stranger from the coast of Barbary brought him large sums of money sent by charitable Christians, and the governor himself, before it was night, upon reading a paper sent on this occasion by the man of God, in which he had written these words, "Our Lord, who he had said, I will not leave thee, neither will I forsake thee, cannot tell a lie, because he is the truth, and therefore a wretched man, who must shortly be the food of worms, cannot tie up the hands of God, who furnishes all his creatures with both food and life," returned all the money he had taken from him, adding thereto 300 crowns of his own, and offering to undergo what penance the patriarch should be pleased to impose on him for his crime. At another time the saint sustained a very great loss, when all the vessels belonging to the church of Alexandria, to the number of 13, meeting with a violent storm in the Adriatic Sea, were constrained to fling their whole freight, consisting of corn and other goods, overboard. On this occasion the holy patriarch said with Job, "The Lord gave, and the Lord hath taken away. As it hath pleased the Lord, so it is done. Blessed be the name of the Lord." And told his friends who came to console him on his misfortune, that with respect to himself, he rather considered it more to his advantage than his loss, imputing it entirely to having taken too much complacency in his alms, without sufficiently guarding against the danger of being infected by vainglory. That he was very sensible of what service afflictions and humiliations are to purify the soul from the dross of pride and vanity, being convinced, as well as the psalmist, "It is good for me that thou hast humbled me, that I may learn thy justifications." Psalm 118. That however severely, as to his own part, he deserved to be punished on account of having given occasion, by his vanity, so many innocent persons being thus reduced, yet as God was still the same as he was in the days of Job, he trusted that notwithstanding his own unworthiness, he would help them out of their distress. This confidence of our saint was amply recompensed, for not long after our Lord restored him by one means or another twice as much as he had lost, the whole of which he employed in comforting and assisting more abundantly than ever the poor and the distressed. The saint, being informed that one of his servants had labor under a pressing necessity, gave him privately with his own hand the weight of 2 pounds in gold. And when the man, confounded at the excess of his goodness towards him, told him he did not know he should be able to look him any more in the face, "Brother," replied the saint, "I have not yet shed my blood for you, as Christ, our common Master and God, has done for us all, and has commanded us to do for our brethren." One of the citizens, being closely pressed to pay a debt, which he had not at the time the means to discharge, addressed himself to a rich nobleman, begging he would lend him 50 pounds of gold upon proper security. He assured him he would, but delayed to put his promise in execution, whilst the other, still closely watched by his creditor, apprehending he would proceed to extremities, had recourse to the holy patriarch, whose heart and hand were ever open to relieve the necessities of all. No sooner had he told him his case, but the saint replied, "My son, if your necessity required it, I would have even given you the clothes off my back. and without further hesitation he lent him the whole sum. The following night the nobleman saw in a dream a person standing upon an altar, to whom many others approached to make their offerings, and for every offering they laid upon the altar they received 100-fold in return. He seemed also to observe the holy patriarch come in immediately after him, and that there lay a sum of money upon a bench before him, which one of the bystanders bid him to take up and offer upon the altar, that he might receive 100-fold. But as he hesitated, and was dilatory in doing as he was desired, the patriarch, who stood behind him, stepped forward, took up the offering, and putting it upon the altar, presently afterwards received 100-fold. The next morning, the nobleman, having sent for the man, offered to let him have the money he wanted, but he replied that his lordship delays to fulfill his promise had obliged him to have recourse to the holy patriarch, by whom he was immediately relieved. Upon which the other related the vision he had seen, and severely condemned himself for having lost, by his want of diligence in doing good, the great reward wherewith God recompenses those works which are done for his sake.